things are there, so you might run into big trouble with, if there's a contract. But I'm not sure if there was in this particular instance.
Yes.
Your question to Parsi Benio. Wow, I butchered that. I apologize. Do you know if there exists precedence or ability to request changes to quotes or parts of donated material or donor-related material?
That would all depend on Purdue policy and if there was a contract involved. Again, I think maybe one of our advisors would know better than any of us.
Yeah.
Not necessarily speaking on this bill per se, but in general, I don't see anything wrong with us making a request. Maybe they can, but I see if we feel like as the voice of the student body it's something we should make a statement on. I don't see any problem with that. I don't think that that's something we should limit ourselves to.
Yes.
Seeing as the reason that we tabled this bill was to get the opinion of the ARC, and we now have an ARC member here, I was wondering if you would comment on the bill.
Sure. So ARC feels that because of how the stone is structurally set into the building, or by the building, and because of the controversy, we don't want it to, per se, divide Purdue campus and or our constituents. And we feel like that we should have these conversations about different perspectives and about math and the history of the situation. Given the permanency and its divisive nature, that ARC moves to take a stance in this bill in keeping with the ARC mission and values of respecting all opinions. Furthermore, after getting more information on the plaque and origin of this establishment, we will welcome further discussion on the matter.
Very good. Yeah, nicely said. Is there any further discussion at this time? Seeing none, we will move to a vote. All in favor, please raise your name placards. Raise them high. All opposed, same sign. Abstentions? With a vote of 10-16-3, resolution 1534 fails. And that officially concludes old business, so we'll now attend to our new business. Yeah.
Motion to bring up Bill 15-73, student activity fee allocation report approval.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to bring up Bill 1573, student activity fee allocation report approval. It's amendable, debatable, requires a majority vote. We're doing this new thing. All right. So. You're the first one I saw.
They were on Friday. Any of the documents until last night. You have a little bit of background on the changes in the report.
So I cannot directly provide for that because I was not the one who submitted that report. That was Michael Brannigan, the chair of SFAB. I don't know if Heather might be able to speak to that.
What was the question? Sorry. The changes on Friday. You said it did not get the revised version. I was just wondering if you could elaborate briefly so that we were aware.
They were typos, grammar things, and just clarity on a couple of things where we thought that maybe some of the wording from an advisor standpoint, we said, hey, these were in the notes or whatever that we had, you may want to change like a slight, take that out, or there was one word misspelled, that kind of correction. So that's what was corrected on Friday and sent out to everybody on that link.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, Senator Romery and I will be abstaining as we applied for us.
Yes.
This is a direct question to Michael Ternetti. When deciding the allocation for Boilermake, was it determined based on 100% of all students participating, or only the students that were Purdue students? And was that in the application or proposal by Boilermake, or was that decided by SBAC?
So, let me look into it. Can you restate your question for me, please?
Okay. In looking at the Boilermake application, when you designated funds, first of all, in their application, did they ask for funding for all students attending for certain line items, or did they only ask for, let's say if there are only 60% are Purdue students, did they only ask for 60% of certain things to be funded? So as they only asked for money for the Purdue students involved.
So, based on what we can fund, again, it was an undergraduate student-driven idea. It did have an effect on Purdue students, but we funded that which could be for those Purdue undergraduate students. Does that make sense?
Did SFAB decide to only fund the Purdue student things, or was that in the proposal from Boilermake?
Let me do a little bit more research. I'll get right back to you.
Okay.
Because I want to give you the most accurate answer, and off the top of my head, I can't provide that. So let me look at their actual application, and then give me a couple of seconds, okay?
Do you guys also have questions for him?
Not for him, I was gonna ask.
Okay, Senator Millett.
So, for a question to anybody on the Sustainability Council, I got like 4 or 5 emails. Yes, been relatively quiet, so I just wanted to like give you a chance. But give you like 60 seconds of my time for you guys, whatever you want to say. Just so that everybody knows what you had to say in the emails.
So I think I should make abundantly clear at the very beginning here that we are here as representatives of the Student Sustainability Council, but quite frankly, by the end of this whole process, we're here as representatives of the student body. We initially became involved with this because so I think ours was actually the one that was changed in the second report that was published, because in our first, the rationale, that's what the phrase was. First rationale that was published for our application, it said that the majority of students for our large event were not Purdue undergraduates. And so we had 2 concerns with that. First, that's false. So we were concerned about that. Second, we had seen nowhere in the regulations that precisely was required. So we reached out to SFAB about that and received a response that I'll try to give you the most direct quote that I can. It claimed that the large event was denied based on the fact that it did not exclusively target Purdue students. And I think several senators have seen that email, so you can support me in that statement. So basically, from that point on, we were working as concerned students. We, in nowhere in reading the rules, because obviously we had to read the rules pretty thoroughly to put together a good application, saw anything to do with exclusivity to Purdue students or any sort of numbers on how many Purdue students had to be represented. And we really wanted to get to the bottom of exactly what rules were being used and if they were consistent across the board. So basically that's the foundation of our involvement, and we became more involved with senators after emailing several of you. In fact, I think probably the majority of you, if we did our homework right, got emails about this. Basically expressing our concerns about the across-the-board application of rules. I'll put it that way for now. And if you have any further questions, I'll be happy to answer them later.
Senator Mackey.
So 2 quick comments kind of related to that correspondence that Mr. Hawes stated. I received an email forwarded from him about his correspondence with Michael Brannigan. Specifically within it, it says that they were asked a direct question about the attendees, and they stated that 250 of the attendees would be Purdue representatives, while only 200 would be from other universities. Assuming that's accurate, that means there can be no discrepancy that they stated that the majority of students attending would be Purdue students. Additionally, direct quote I have from Michael Brannigan, I recognize he's not here, but just for the record. However, per section 2, subsection C of the SFAB funding guidelines and requirements, all events must target the West Lafayette undergraduate population exclusively. I would like to refer to said document where it says proposals should be directed at the Purdue West Lafayette undergraduate student community. It does not say exclusively in that language. I'm a little bit concerned because I feel like this means that the funding guidelines were misrepresented. So I guess direct question to Mr. Ternetti. I apologize, I know you're researching, but can you tell us whether the wording exclusively came from precedent set or whether that was what was going on with that?
Okay, so first let me address Adi's question,
Sure.
and then I'll get to you. I have a feeling we might have a backlog more than once. So please, again, bear with me. I want to give you the most accurate information that I possibly can, both as a proxy and as a representative on SFAB. So first, to address Adi's question regarding whether it was a certain percent requested, they did request approximately 60%. Not all of it was things that would fall under the SFAB guidelines. We ended up funding 70,000 of that 114,540. Does that answer your question? Okay, excellent. Now I want to move to the second question, which was about the interpretation of whether it is exclusively Purdue University students. And again, I'd like to refer back to section 6 of those funding guidelines, which is included in all applications and which was referred that it is in effect on the Purdue University West Lafayette campus. I'm scrolling to that now. So directly under that, before you get to points A through E, highest consideration will be given to proposals that most adequately satisfy these guidelines. So what we're looking at here is a complete holistic review of all of these points, and that point in particular that it directly impacts the undergraduate students on campus. That does not specifically say only undergraduates. It does not also specify the converse of that. So it was our interpretation that given the outreach to the population of interest for this particular event, that we weighted this based upon what most completely and wholly fulfilled the adequate satisfaction. Does that make sense? Can I clear that up more for you?
Sort of a different question then. Are there any other cases in which because from what I understand, the reasoning that they were entirely denied funding was after removal of the line item of the summit, they did not meet the minimum of $15,000 required for SFund funding. Have there been other cases in which you've determined that something is not adequately, or I'll rephrase, highest consideration to me isn't the same as does not meet the qualifications or does not meet the requirements. It means that you're ranking them based on priority, which I believe so, but it's the same thing in terms of, we rank based on priority, like on campus, that like open to all students, et cetera, and then things like travel are at the very bottom. But I don't believe that means that they outright eliminate those line items. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Can you address that?
Sure. Let me say really fast, we have less than a minute.
I move to extend debate by 5 minutes.
Second. Been properly moved and seconded to extend debate. All in favor, please raise your name, placards. All opposed, same sign. Okay. Abstentions? So with a vote of 26-1-2, the motion to extend debate passes. With that, let's give the floor back to poor Michael.
So let me try to address that question the best that I can. As far as reducing that aspect of the application did drop the amount requested under $15,000, which per SFAB guidelines we cannot fund. However, that does not preclude an application to SOGA. So that was a factor in our decision as well, that this organization is not entirely eliminated from the possibility of receiving funding, but that if it did not, to the most adequate satisfaction of these guidelines, meet the expectations, that funding could be found.
Sarah Cole.
I just have, okay, well, when I read the report, about the SOGA section is like, it seemed like you guaranteed the SOGA report, which I have to, like, that is not true whatsoever. First of all, we keep on going farther and farther, because there is a list of priorities. And that's what I'm thinking is something different for me to wrap my head around versus your process of going through the different applications, is, especially when you're looking at it based on priority about who fits the guidelines, but you don't have a set priority to look at it. So you can't say, like when SOGA goes to the applications, it's free on campus for all students is what's first. You guys don't have that organization, it feels like. Just something to look at, it's like this case happens again, but it seems like you're basing it that they don't meet the full requirements of the guidelines, and that just doesn't make sense to me. You can clear that up.
Yeah, and so this comes down to this idea, and you are correct that SOGA has those more specific guidelines as far as a classification schedule that SFAB does not have. That said, we still have to go through the process of weighting the applications, at least subjectively, when we're looking at this and saying, you know, this application meets, it's an undergraduate student-driven idea, but we're concerned about the depth and scope of impact on the Purdue University West Lafayette campus, which is within our purview.
So, direct question to Michael. So, what I was hearing is, you know, you've got this one side where you're weighting it, or on this other side where once you weight it in terms of the funding, it actually drops it below the $15,000 threshold, which you just can't fund. So, in a similar manner to how the other event that was discussed, I forget, by Senator Villanueva, that was $114,000, and we ended up funding $70,000 of that because roughly 60% of it was going to be Purdue students. When you apply that guideline to this, it's dropped under $15,000 interpretation of what you said, which then automatically takes it out of consideration for funding. Is that correct?
So, as I understand this, could you rephrase your question for me?
So, when you weighted the amount of Purdue students relative to the cost of what their event was going to be, you found that it was going to be below $15,000. So, then that you cannot fund. Is that correct?
So I don't believe that was the case. What it was we found that in the course of reviewing this application, that the scope of impact on campus was not significant enough to meet that adequate satisfaction. But as far as dropping it under a certain threshold, which we can no longer fund, that is within the letter of our guidelines, such that if there's something in the application that is not within SFAB's purview to fund, and eliminating that section of the application does reduce a given application below $15,000, then it is true that that is something that we can't fund at that point. And we do encourage SOGA applications, but by no means, and this goes back to Senator Toll's point, is that there's no guarantee of that funding. But I believe Heather could add a point of clarification that I'm lacking.
Yeah, just want to throw it out there. Minute warning. Senator Frazier.
Move to extend debate by another 5 minutes.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to extend debate by another 5 minutes.
Point of order. Can you extend debate multiple times in the same motion?
Krishna.
You can't amend a motion to extend debate.
No. Can you extend debate multiple times in the same motion?
I don't really understand what you mean by that. You could just like state the time that you want to extend it by. So if you want to like extend it twice by 5 minutes, you can say that.
Okay. He does not have a report. Karen.
So the motion to extend debate has been properly moved and seconded. Moving to a vote. All in favor, please raise your name placards. All opposed, same sign. Abstentions. With a vote of 25-1-3, what?
Are you voting yes or no?
No, I voted yes already.
Slow your roll. Okay. So with a vote of 25-1-3, the motion to extend debate by another 5 minutes passes. Senator Churchman.
So I'd like to make it explicitly clear that the Boilermake funding was scaled based on the amount of Purdue students compared to the total cost of the event before it ever even got to SOGA. The SOGA scaling is SVAP, yes, thank you. The SVAP funding, as it was adjusted based on SVAP, as he stated earlier, was because they could not fund certain things in the line item budget. So those issues are separate from PSSC, if anyone was concerned that the proportion of students, for lack of a better reason, wasn't going to be enough. I think ultimately where we're going with this debate, and the ultimate question is that a rationale was used in the Purdue pilot decision to not fund based on the impact it would have on campus. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit as to why that rationale was not put in for the PSSC?
So let me do the best I can to address that question. I do want to figure out if Heather had a point of clarification on the previous.
Go ahead.
Heather.
So, I just want to go back to the 15,000, like where we're talking about when it drops below the 15,000. The group across the board, as an advisor, as Doug and I are sitting in there, we make sure that they are using the same rationale on all of the things, and the conversations are held equally at each one. So if they bring up something at the very beginning when we start discussion on an X proposal, that we made sure that they were having the same conversation when they got to the last proposal. So I think that's one of the things in question, and I feel like that was done. I think that where we dropped and when they eliminated, when they said that they did that and it dropped below the funding proposal, there were a couple of others that also did the same thing and the same rationale was used. Because maybe they put transportation in there and that's something that we cannot fund. So that piece of it was used in other proposals as well. But I will say that, I think that some of this is off of an email that was sent with wording that was misproperly used. And interpreted incorrectly. And so I just want you to know that there were a student from each of your colleges that sat through this for an entire Saturday and an entire Friday evening and did do their due diligence in the eyes of Doug and I and feel like they put their best effort forward. I think that they all know that if it does get voted down tonight that we will meet again and discuss this, but in terms of where the rules follow, do we feel like, do the guidelines maybe not spell out how this should be done? Like Taylor was just saying, yes, there are probably improvements that can be made, and that is one of the things that was passed this year, that at the end of this we will come to you guys with recommendations. So just so you know, but according to what is here and what that group decided, how they were going to view each proposal was held equally across the board. Thank you.
Senator White.
I yield my time to Mr. Hall.
So, this might actually come as a shock, but I'm going to try to help Michael out here. The question that was addressed a few minutes ago, I think, was to the effect of if the SSC summit was scaled down because of the number of participants that were there, basically. That didn't happen. So when it dropped below $15,000 because the event itself was eliminated because I'm actually basing this off of what I just heard, because it didn't directly impact Purdue students. So obviously that's not my opinion, but based on what I just heard, that's why it was eliminated, so it went below $15,000. It had nothing to do with Boilermake scaling. That's not actually related to this in this case. We thought it may have been initially, but if you use the 50, this is the direct answer to his question. If you use 250 divided by 450 is 55%. You use that scaling, it's still above $15,000. So that was not a problem, period. So that is the direct answer to the question. I hope that helped.
Senator.
Based on that answer, I think it's a pretty much black and white argument, is because it's that, if you compare those two, it's still over 15,000. It's 55% of the attendees are Purdue students. That's a violation. Kind of indisclosed.
Time is actually up.
A quick point. I was actually mistaken earlier when I said that you can't amend motions to extend debate. You can, in fact, amend motions to extend debate.
Right, which is what we were doing, right? We're good.
Oh, well, actually, before it was, the motion was over to extend debate. So after that, it's a separate motion to extend debate.
Okay.
But if one person says to extend it by 5 minutes and then somebody else says, no, I want 5 minutes more, then they can amend it to add on to that.
Thanks, Christian.
Okay.
Point of order, does that mean we can add more time right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, any motion to extend debate has been asked before. It's over, so you can.
Sarah?
I move to extend debate a further, we'll say 10 minutes, so we don't have to keep doing this.
Amend it to 20.
Okay, 20.
So point of order, you can't amend a previously passed motion without a 2/3 vote. This is a completely different motion than just amending a original motion. If we were going to amend this, we should have done this 5 minutes ago. The motion is still in the floor.
I apologize. I move to extend debate to 10 minutes.
Okay. It's been properly moved and seconded to extend debate. No, it hasn't been.
Second!
Now it's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor, please raise your name placards. All opposed, same sign. Keep them up. People keep changing things. Nine now. Okay. Abstentions. 3. Okay, 3. So, the motion to extend debate passes with a vote of 15-9-3. With that, I don't even remember where we were. What? Yeah, but I don't remember who was speaking or who. I think so. Sarah.
So from what I've heard, it wasn't just scaled down based on the number of produced students similar to, there was line items that they could not fund that they had to remove just based on their guidelines. And after they removed those line items, then it dropped below 15,000. So just direct question to our advisor Heather. So was that how it was applied? It was applied equally across the board, as you said earlier?
Yes.
And so based on that, it seems pretty black and white to me that if they applied the same guidelines on what they could and couldn't fund, they removed those equally from all organizations, and then it dropped below $15,000, they can't fund it, unless I'm misunderstanding something.
Sarah.
I'd like to have a direct question for student body treasurer and SOGA president Peter Boyd. So, in your opinion, as president of a funding organization, do you believe that any guidelines or any discrepancies were made here?
For me, when I read their rationale, I think that's what it comes down to. And the rationale clearly says, primary summit event catered to a population comprised of a significant number of non-produced students, thus violating SFAB funding guidelines. I don't think that that is one of their rules. I think that it has to be, we discussed at some point, I don't know if it was the majority or what the exact wording in the Constitution was, but it was not this loose, significant number of non-produced students. I don't know what that means. Significant number. I think that's too vague. And for me personally, if I were a senator voting on this, I would probably not pass this bill, at least based on their rationale. That's just my opinion. SOGA and SFAB, I get questions about SFAB all the time. They're very different. There is some subjectivity available to SFAB. SOGA is very much what is on this application, and that's all that can be considered. So, albeit I am not the most trusted person for this answer, that's how I feel.
Okay. Sarah Getty.
if you turn to page 3 of the SOGA report, subsection F in that section mentions that allocation requests for, oh no, subsection E, I apologize. Allocation requests must total at least $15,000 annually. Lesser amounts should apply for SOGA at appropriate funding times. From my understanding, their request was above $15,000 no matter what was taken out of the funding, no matter what was scaled back. Their request was over $15,000, and that's what these guidelines currently say. So if that is the rationale, then they violated their guidelines.
Okay. Just so you guys know, Heather's raising her hand asking for someone to yield their time. So, Sarah Friedland.
I move to yield 2 minutes of my time.
I just was gonna state, right above the one that was just stated in on page 3, article 2, is C, proposals should be directed at the Purdue West Lafayette undergraduate student community. And I think that along with the page 9, consideration for proposals and how the group interpreted things is where that came from and how they applied them. And so that's what they were looking at. One of the things that I do urge you guys to understand is that when we do viewpoint neutrality, we have to go off of what's in the proposal and the questions that were answered and how they were answered at the presentation. We cannot take in other information we may have about something if it was not in that stuff or stated directly and answered directly that way during the presentation. So that's stuff that was an open area, and there were a couple of people here that may be able to speak to that if I'm missing something that was said that we're missing. But other than that, a lot of people were not at those presentations, but they were open.
Yes.
So I'd like to address several things. First of all, SFAB is very different than SOGA, especially when it comes to, in SOGA, when you have those lists of where you go, you're going, this is what we're going to fund in what order. Those highest considerations aren't like that. And first of all, they were passed by Senate. They were part of the rules and guidelines you all voted unanimously yes for last semester. And they're not used as the list. They are used to include and exclude. And those are the guidelines that we gave them. If you want it to be something that's more like SOGA, you can change it in the future, but we shouldn't base this current proposal off that. I personally do not believe that they explicitly broke the rule in question, because the rule in question doesn't say that it has to be significant, doesn't say it has to be exclusively, it doesn't say it can't allow. They didn't break the rule, they interpreted it differently than than some of you want. What we need to see is if they applied these rules, the same across the board, and Heather and the advisors of SFAB made sure of that, and that was what my Boilermake question was in reference to. Last year when Boilermake asked SFAB for money, it was scaled back based on the number of students involved. And if the same rationale was used this year, they could have done the same with the sustainability initiatives. It was not done that way. They initially, in their proposal, asked only based off of that. So that rationale can't be used to deny it. Scaling wasn't done this year, so that couldn't have been given them to allow them a greater amount. Honestly, why they didn't break the rules, they just didn't apply them the way you want. In addition, the request that Senator Getty was referring to is the same language that was used in the previous rules of SFAB and the rules before it, and has been used for the last 3 to 4 years to say if you fall below 15,000, you do not get a request. So us changing how that's done now is very different. In addition, off of what Heather said, we need to go off what's in the official report. It doesn't matter what Chair Brannigan emailed to someone that said exclusively, it doesn't matter what we were talked about in the things. We need to go off what was given to us in the proposal by SFAB.
Okay. Yes.
So yeah, you kind of stole my thunder there. I was pretty much going to say something very similar. Regardless of how we feel about how SFAB should interpret or shouldn't interpret, I think it's important when you make your voting decision to consider whether or not they interpreted it consistently across the board. And I think that even what Heather said, that this was true. And so I will be voting yes.
Yes.
With that, I think it's easy to say that we all already know how we're voting, so I move to call the question.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to call to question. This requires a 2/3 vote. All in favor, please raise your name placards. Raise them high. All opposed, same sign. Abstentions? Wait, that doesn't make sense. Wait, can the abstentions raise their hands? Okay, yeah, so it must have been 24. Oh, you did? Oh, yeah, okay. Well, you make sure to raise it high. Sorry, we didn't see you. Okay. With a vote of... So with a vote of 23-06, the motion to call to question passes. So we will now... So, stands. Yeah, it still stands. And we will be moving to a vote. So all in favor of Bill 1573, student activity fee allocation report approval, please raise your name, please. Okay. All opposed, same sign. Bless you. Abstentions? So with a vote of 8-15-6, Bill 1573 fails. Yeah.
Point of order. Does this mean that we now have to report information? We have to submit the grievance report to Michael Brannigan, right?
When you submit a grievance to me, and within 24 hours, I'll send it to Michael Brannigan.
Yeah.
Further point of information, is this grievance report on behalf of all of Senate, or do we submit individual reports?
I think it's on behalf of all of Senate. Is that correct, Heather?
It's however everyone wants to put it together and send it to us.
I would say that please send me individualized reports, and then I'll go over each one of them and send it off to Michael Brannigan.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sorry, I don't have the rules in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it says that each senator who has a grievance should file it somewhere.
And he has, yeah. But he can put it in one report. It doesn't have to be like 7 different reports. It can be one.
Thank you.
Okay.
Using iPhone voice control.
All right. With that, Senator Toll.
I move to bring up Bill Resolution 1541.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded to bring up Resolution 1541. It's amendable, debatable, and requires a majority vote. Is there any discussion on the floor at this time? And Senator Toll?
All right, I'm to bring, make a friendly amendment for it to say, can I just say everything on the Google Doc? Or like, I don't know how that new system works.
Yeah.
So don't say everything on, okay, so I would like to make a friendly amendment to say, let's just do like the whereas clause, say, instead of Purdue University first responders, instead of police department has, and then in the therefore clause, be it recommended, am I going to that? Okay. Whereas, as of today, the Purdue University's first responders have not utilized this grant, and then therefore be it recommended that Purdue University Police Department, Purdue University Fire Department, and all other Purdue University first respondents, or there's like newly respondent personnel.
All right.
Second.
Okay. The amendment has been properly moved and seconded. It requires a majority vote. Is there any discussion on the amendment at this time? Seeing none, we will move to a vote. All in favor, please raise your name placards. Okay. With the unanimous vote, the amendment passes. so we are back to discussion on the floor about this bill. Yes, Senator Rankin.
I'd like to make an amendment to the second whereas clause where it says, as of June 1st, 2015, law enforcement has saved 130 lives in Indiana by administering drug naloxone, by being the first one on the scene, and where it says scene, change the spelling.
But will you speak up? It's hard to hear you.
Basically, second whereas clause, at the very end where it says scene, needs to be spelled correctly.
It's
It's not the second
to last whereas.
Second to last, oh, second to last.
Oh, yep, spelling error, yep. Yeah, that's friendly. Yeah, that can easily just be fixed. Oh, yeah, we're good.
Thank you.
Then, is there any further discussion? Senator White?
As a senator of the College of Pharmacy and someone with some knowledge on this topic, I would like to say that I support this. The problem of particular prescription medicines being abused is growing rapidly throughout our nation, and this is a way that we can help to protect those people that do have an overdose. But I would like to caution that this is just a first step. I think that along with this, we should always be pushing people that once they're saved or brought back or whatever situation, that we then push them somewhere where they need to get help from that point on. But I do support this.
Thank you. Yes.
I'd just like to echo Senator White. I'm very in favor of this bill. As a law society minor who concentrates in drug studies, this is, we're a little bit behind on this, really. Lafayette's already implemented this. West Lafayette is working on it. And my hometown did this actually at least a year ago. So I'm really excited to see if we
Yes.
Sorry. When I asked, I'm sorry, what did you?
Matthew.
Yeah, when I asked Matthew here about, I asked him if it was implemented in Lafayette, he said no. So, because they wouldn't allow it, so, I don't know, I'm confused.
I didn't think that Lafayette Police Department was. According to our office, they're not, but it's really hard to keep track of all of them just because literally police forces across the state are getting trained on a weekly basis. Like the whole state police force is getting trained tomorrow, and there are 35 of them getting trained tomorrow, and then they're going out to their separate districts and training on their own schedule. So it's hard for our office to even like keep track of all the police departments that are trained in the state. So yeah.
Senator
I think, like, the point is that we're pushing them to get trained, as like Senator White said, it's a first step. I think it could be implemented in Purdue as well as Lafayette. If they haven't gotten trained, if they have gotten trained, great. But we're focusing today on Purdue and West Lafayette. So I think it's a great first step, and I look forward to moving forward.
Is there any further discussion? All right. Seeing none, we will move to a vote. All in favor, please raise those name placards. Unanimous. All right. With a unanimous vote, resolution 1541 passes. Yes, Senator Goody.
I move to bring up Bill 1569.
Second.
Thank you.
Remember, they gotta be seconded. Thank you. All right, so it's been properly moved and seconded to bring up, did you say Bill 1569? Yeah. Legislative distribution deadline change to the standing. It's amendable, debatable, and requires a 2/3 vote. Senator Getty, why don't you start us?
It only requires a majority vote, but sorry. So this, we passed 1568 at the last meeting that formally changed the deadline to submit legislation from Saturday to Thursday, but we didn't change the distribution deadline. So this just changes, or this formally changes our standing rules to reflect the current procedures that we follow.
Yes.
As pro temp, I approve this time.
All right, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we will move to a vote. All in favor, please raise your name placards. All right, with the unanimous vote, Bill 1569 passes. So now am I? No? Someone. Very good.
I move to bring up Bill 1570.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to bring up Bill 1570. It's amendable, it's debatable. Do Senate standing rules require only a majority? I thought it was 2 votes.
I'm checking right now. Amendments, majority vote.
Okay, all right, cool. And it requires a majority vote. Very good.
So this bill, I think it's rather interesting. It has a few sponsors that I'm sure would like to give their opinion as well. So this would make it to when anyone makes an amendment on a piece of legislation, whether that be a bill or resolution, and that amendment is shown in the final version of the bill or resolution, the person who moved to amend the bill or resolution would be added as an author to that piece of legislation, so that keeps us kind of accountable for the things that we do to legislation, because there are sometimes that we amend things to a crazy amount, which sometimes they need it. And it would also give the original authors, if they felt that the amendments altered the original legislation to a point that they no longer wanted their name on it, they would have 24 hours to request their name be removed from the piece of legislation.
Good deal. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor, please raise your name placards. Okay. With another unanimous vote, which makes our lives so much easier, Bill 1570 amendment authorship passes.
Continuing in chronological order, I move to bring up Bill 1571.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to bring up Bill 1571. Is there any discussion on the floor?
So I wrote this bill and kind of talked to some members of Senate. The goal in this was that because Senate office hours are explicitly called out in Article 2, Section 4, Part A, Subsection 3, to read, all senators will be required to hold a minimum of 3 office hours per week. 2 of the 3 office hours must be completed in the PSG office. At times there are issues where senators can't make it here 2 of those hours a week. Currently the bill reads all senators will be required to hold a minimum of 3 office hours per week, striking the clause where it would require 2 of the 3 office hours to be in the office. There was debate last night at the legislation forum to consider whether or not one or other locations should be added as requirements for where you should be or where those could be. A couple of them being discussed that you should hold them in your college. The issue is that at colleges such as engineering, agriculture, HHS, not to exclude any others, are very large and have places where anybody can hold them. So to say that you should hold it in your college is very hard to enforce and requires extra work on other people's part. So it's, in some senses, not worth it. I would move to amend the bill to include a requirement that one of the office hours be in the Purdue Student Government Office.
Second. Okay. It's been properly moved and seconded.
Point of information, what's the exact text in the order?
With 1 hour being required in the Purdue Student Government Office.
Alright.
After per week.
Okay. Are you good, man? Miranda, what are you adding?
That's what I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah, we're gonna have to work out the kinks that
I
is in
don't
the rules.
know who's typing. I was going to, but someone is typing right now.
Okay. I'm confused now too, but why don't, so you're proposing this amendment?
To read that 1 office hour should be required in the Purdue Student Government Office.
Okay, good. It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any debate about this amendment at this time? Yes.
So I think that this is a great amendment. I think there's really two different philosophies. For those of you that have been here for last year and this year, there have been two very different philosophies about office hours. Last year the goal was to bring people into our new office and more building a sense of camaraderie amongst PSG, as opposed to this year it's more focused on, and while last year it was like it doesn't matter whether you're doing PSG work or not as long as you're here. As opposed to this year, the goal is more get PSG work done regardless of where it is. There are two completely different philosophies and they both have their pros and cons. But I think I fully understand that senators have meetings elsewhere and so you shouldn't necessarily have to be here all the time. However, I think that it is very important that we don't completely separate Senate and DoD. There's already, and there usually is, quite a bit of divide. So I think removing times that senators should be in the office is going to worsen that divide and therefore weaken the organization as a whole. So I'm happy to go to 1 hour, I think that that's a great compromise.
I like the compromise as well. Not being required to be in Croc at any point. I think there's, like Daniel said, just for the organization. I like the sense of camaraderie that we get just by working in the office together. And a lot of times, I was talking to someone the other day, I don't know what's going on with the other branches unless I'm here in the office talking to members, which I really like about office hours.
Senator Campbell.
So what I was working on while we were speaking earlier.
Can you please try and speak up? There's a lot of noise over here.
Well, what I was working while we were speaking earlier is what I thought would be a good compromise in the same fashion where it would require you to be in the office should you need to be, but also gives you the option to be out of the office, which is why I thought maybe a good compromise might be to put something to the effect, any office hours occurring outside of the PSG office need to be approved by the President pro tempore. So that wouldn't require any set number to be in the office, but it would require that it's implied that they must be in the office unless they're approved otherwise. Anyone have thoughts on that before I propose it as an amendment?
Sarah Friedman.
I think it's really important that we require at least one in the office. Oh, I totally understand where you're coming from, but I think putting this in our standing rules is a key factor of making sure that we can, like Senator Romery and others have said, really bridge the divide, if you will, between core and DoD. As someone who came from DoD originally, and I'm really happy I did, that was a great experience. Senate was really intimidating. My first semester here, I saw these people standing up in suits, and I was scared out of my mind of them. What really helped me bridge that and actually helped spark my interest in Senate was people having to sit down here and talk with me and talk about different ideas. And I really think that making us, as the legislative body, forcing ourselves or making ourselves accountable to this is a really important action we can take.
Very good.
Direct question to Senator Fraser. Will this alter under Part 3, there's Part A and Part B, will this alter those in any way? Will it remove them or will those stay intact as they are?
Can you repeat the question?
So under Section 3, there's a Part A listing appropriate uses of office hours, and then all others can be approved by the pro tempore. Will this alter that?
My intention was that no, it will not.
So you just wanted to alter Part 3, not the subsection A and B?
It should be Part A, subsection 3, I thought was where that was.
And then under Part 3, A and B will stay the same?
Should be, yes.
Okay.
Let me pull it up in a moment.
Sorry. Page 6 of the bylaws.
Yeah, Sarah.
Slight suggestion of a motion from Miranda. I think it's important if we ask Renner if he's prepared to receive this numerous number of questions about where and when we should have office hours. If he's prepared for that kind of workload, or even if at that point, how is he going through and actually deciding this? And sort of how is it enforced beyond what we're already doing to enforce office hours?
I think it's a good point to bring this up. So I think like going through and approving every single office hour would be extremely tedious. However, I'm not opposed to the idea of going through the document and seeing where people are at, and if something raises a red flag, like why are you at this certain location? So I could send them a text and be like, why did you do an office hour there. And if they give me a legitimate response, then that's fine. But if it's not a really good response, then I could disapprove that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I really like that as its own thing, but not necessarily replacing the one office hour. I mean, if that's a path that we decide to do, to make sure that the other two are spent in good places, that's awesome. I think that's a great way to keep us accountable. But I still really think that we need to make sure that we spend time in the PSU office. We meet with people who maybe don't travel. Like, I mean, as a bio major, I spend most of my time in Lilly. Meet with other PSU members who might be in DoD, I might not have any contact with. It doesn't force, it allows me to meet with representatives that are either concerned students in my college I might not other see, or just concerned student body members. We serve our college, we also serve Purdue as a whole. And I think it's important to remember that this really provides a really good melting pot for other DoD members, it provides a melting pot for other colleges, it brings everybody together.
Senator Almond.
Just to address Senator Campbell's amendment, there's already a stipulation in our bylaws, Part A, subsection 3, subsection B, all other hours must be approved by the pro tempore. So we already have a stipulation in case you want to do external office hours too, whatever is going on with your acceptable office hours, several of which are already listed. Just to go through those real quick, the following are acceptable activities for office hours: any hours spent in the Purdue Student Government Office, committee meetings, meetings with the Senator's respective student council, meetings taking place with the dean of the Senator's respective college, any meeting taking place with the Senator's constituent on student government-related issues. So I just want to kind of point out that every week you either have probably a Senate meeting or a committee meeting. And I believe most committee meetings run about an hour. So you're already, and that, I could be wrong, sometimes meetings are canceled, that's fine. But you're already basically spending that one office hour that's required to drop in a Senate-related issue, not fulfilling the point of the additional office hour, which I'm hearing from most people here, is to communicate and collaborate with the rest of Purdue student government. I just wanted to kind of say that. Additionally, Treasurer Boyd, did you have something you want to say? You were raising your flag for a while.
Yeah, I'll say something quickly. I know it's nothing financial related, and that's usually when they talk. But as someone who's in the office a lot, like a lot, I don't know, when I look around at like the senators and DoD members that are in the office, those are the ones that I know. And the senators that I don't know, typically are the ones that don't come. And I think that's just, we're a large organization, and I think that in order to build camaraderie, to build any sense of leadership, I think that people should be in the office. Personally, I would like to see all office hours done here. I know that that would raise a lot of issues for certain people, but that's just how I feel. And I don't know. What I wonder is that if you're going to be doing PSG work, you can do it here or in some other building on campus. To me, it makes more sense to do it here amongst other PSG members, and most likely in a place where you can access more.
With that, we are actually out of time for discussion on this amendment. No, there was never an amendment to the amendment proposed. It was just the amendment. I think everyone's getting confused with the Google Doc. So at this time, yeah. Is there a second? All right. It's been properly moved and seconded to extend debate by 5 minutes for the amendment. Yeah, that requires a vote, right? All in favor, please raise your hand, placards. Okay. All opposed, same sign. Abstentions?
I wasn't abstaining, sorry.
You're not abstaining.
I was not abstaining.
You voted no.
I voted no.
So with the vote of 522-2, the motion to extend debate on this amendment fails, so we are now just voting on Senator Frazier's proposed amendment, which adds with 1 hour being required in the Purdue Student Government Office. All in favor, please raise your name placards. There's it. Just have to sign up for it. Oh, yeah, you're right, sorry, 26. All opposed, same sign. Abstentions? With a vote of 26-03, Senator Frazier's amendment passes. So we are back to discussion about the bill. Sam.
Direct question to President Young. How do you feel that this amendment or change would impact the organization?
Well, to be honest, I don't know because most of you don't do your office hours at all. Like not even close to the required amount, so I don't really know. As you can tell, I've been on sort of an office hours tear lately, and I will continue to do so. I don't really envision it being a big impact, mostly because so few people actually do it at all. And I think we've spent a lot of time studying it. I don't see any negatives. And generally speaking, the more you're outside of the office interacting with constituents, I think the better. It doesn't mean that you can't come into the office if you need to meet with someone or get acquainted with the rest of the PSP. So I'm fine with the change. I don't see that.
Taking my time too,
Similar to what President Young and Treasurer Boyd said, I think coming from a BOD perspective, I actually think that it should be required more so that senators are in here. A lot of times when my directors need to either talk to GR and Senate or try to get opinions on resolutions that we're trying to lobby for at the State House, it becomes very difficult to do so out of the office. And so if there's not like a center collaborative area, I don't think 1 hour a week is conductive of that. And if it is in different places throughout campus, how do the constituents know that? How do our directors know where you are at those times?
Yes.
So I feel that like the most important thing is listening to constituents, right? Now, Croc is a good central location that everybody more or less knows where it is, and you can collaborate with your fellow senators. But I think that if office hours were to be allowed to be held elsewhere, there should be some sort of recommendation or requirement that they be in your college's building, because that's who you're representing.
Senator Kinnaman?
Well, to counter that, I'm in exploratory studies, and exploratory studies doesn't have a building to hold office hours in. So I guess you guys can see the problem there.
Senator Moll?
Again, I'll say like I'm in HHS. We have like all the buildings. I would say there's a classroom probably in a little bit of everyone. I mean, I'm in HHS, and I had one in Armstrong. So, but I was going to also like being as FA chair, trying to get people to be the JNET representatives is like pulling teeth. And when Donnie is, I think, a great example of that. I'm in the office, I see Donnie, I desperately needed someone, and I really wanted someone from BOD or court or anyone, just because like I wanted just not senators to do it. And I kind of forced whoever's in the office with me to do it. So like, I think that's a great way, you know, just to get them involved, but also if I would have to do my office hours in the office, I wouldn't have had a representative for that office.
Yeah. Just piggybacking off pretty much what everyone is saying. I mean, you know, it's fine because Croc does seem like a very inconvenient location, but we do all meet here. Like, I wouldn't know half the people being a senator in such a short time if I didn't have to do my office hours here. So I do just want to point that out that I got to know everyone so well because I was sitting here for hours and hours, you know, doing office hours. And not only that, you know, you should have to do that. You should have to come in and, you know, get to know your fellow PhD students, as well as your senators and all that. So I just want to point that out.
Sarah?
I just want to make 2 quick points. And I think Senator Romery made a very good point, and it depends on the philosophy of what you want office hours to mean. To me, I think office hours are a very important part of ensuring the overall health of Purdue student government, of ensuring the health of the overall organization. I know that a lot of times it's easy to feel separated from BOD, from court, but the truth is we all act under the same name. And I think a big help towards that, I mean, I can give you an example that I know people I've only seen at the fall of spring retreat because they haven't been off hours and I haven't had a chance to work with them, collaborate with them, ask them, what's going on. And I think that's kind of tragic because I think we're a stronger organization as a whole when we can communicate with each other, when we see each other on a regular basis, when we can collaborate with one another. To make another point, I feel like it's a little bit strange for us to kind of hold ourselves to a different standard. Every other branch currently does office hours in the office. I personally would be in favor of potentially tabling this to IA to conducting a study or some research on how the other branches would react to something like this, as whether they would with that. So, direct question to Senator Dinger: would you be open and amenable to such a plan? In that case, I move to table this to IA.
It's been properly moved and seconded to table this bill to IA. Yeah, till when?
Until until the next Senate meeting.
Okay. So until the next Senate meeting. All in favor, please raise your name placards. All opposed, same sign. Okay. Abstentions? Okay. With a vote of 25-1-3, the motion to table this to IA and then bring it up at the next meeting passes. So with that, moving on. Yes.
Motion to bring up Bill 1572.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to bring up Bill 1572, Senate Legislation Transparency Amendment. It's amendable, debatable, requires a majority vote. And Senator Dinger, or you want to start?
Yeah, so this bill, very simple. Basically, it will require that the prison board puts basically a template of bills and resolutions online, so that any member of the student body can write a bill or resolution, just increasing the transparency of our students.
Thank you. Yeah.
To add to that, I was previously a member of Senate, and being on the outside, you realize that if you don't know someone or you aren't involved, you have literally no idea how to write legislation, how to submit it, when and where to submit it. And this is just a really great way of making sure that all students can author bills, but most students have no idea how.
Yeah.
As a new seat, I was unable to find any of tonight's legislation on the website. So I think it would be best for everybody to make the legislation more viewable and make it easier for students outside of this circle to find it.
Yeah. Is there any further discussion? Yeah.
Yeah, so as pro temp, it looks like I might have a bit of homework to do for the next meeting. Thank you guys for looking out for my well-being, but yeah, I'm okay with this as well. But if you guys would like to help me, I would gladly accept it.
All right, Senator Gates.
It's a minor thing, and I talked to Adib, but I think they're going to have to make a friendly amendment to change the 6 to a 7 and 7 to 8. There's already a section 6 under that article.
Yes.
I might be looking at a different version of the standing rules. I just can't find a 6 under that. Oh, it's not a section 6. It's section 1, subsection 6.
Oh,
That's
I'm so sorry.
That's fine. Sorry, there's a lot of.
Thank you for clarifying.
That should actually say Article 4, Section 1, subsection, to include those 6 and 7 are subsections, just to clarify.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, we will move to a vote. All in favor, please raise your name placards. With a unanimous vote, Bill 1572 passes. Yeah.
I move to bring up Bill 1574.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded to bring up Bill 1574, creation of the cabinet level position of press secretary. It is amendable, debatable, and it requires a majority vote. Is there any discussion at this time? Yes. You're yielding your time. Oh, yeah.
So I wasn't in caucus, so I'm not sure how it all went down, but the intent of this piece of legislation is to streamline the communication between all three branches into one specific place. So as of right now, our governing docs find ways for us to get information, but it's limited to the director level. And by elevating it to a cabinet level position, I think we could better find ways to make sure we grab information and kind of the intent and activities of the judicial and legislative branches as well. I know there might be some changes to this, but as of right now, it is written to also absorb the senior policy advisor position. And my intent with that was just because that position currently is given a very vague set of responsibilities. And I found that after speaking with President Young that there is already quite a few people in cabinet. And so this would not just add an additional position, but would kind of maintain the current level of people there while also not leaving a void of responsibility.
Yes.
So I firmly agree with Executive Director Spencer about the necessity of a press secretary cabinet position. But the issue I have is the senior policy absorption, I guess, and I understand that it may not be very well defined in the governing docs, and it may be a lot of people in cabinet, but I think they are two very distinct roles. So senior policy really needs to be somebody that has knowledge of Purdue student government, whereas the press secretary really needs to know the common stuff, PR knowledge, and it really doesn't matter whether or not they're PSG, having a pass in PSG. Furthermore, senior policy advisor versus press secretary, the title. Senior policy advisor Pendergast pointed out at one point talking that going and meeting with an administrator as a senior policy advisor versus a press secretary implies two very different things. So I think it's important to keep them separate. So I move to amend this bill to the version that I've written and given it to Secretary Mamani and discussed in caucus. I guess I'll go through an overview of what it does, and then if anybody wants a copy, I'll grab one. So I add a whereas clause that says, although the current role of senior policy advisor may be redefined or eliminated to optimize cabinet efficiency, the press secretary role has distinct title implications, qualifications, and roles. And then essentially in the therefore, just made press secretary a new thing, and said that they would advise on issues of public relations. And then finally, one big important thing is that therefore be it further enacted that the Internal Affairs Committee of Senate Session 16 perform an audit of the senior policy advisor role to determine if the redefinition of responsibilities or complete elimination is necessary prior to the 2017 election season. So we can do this in incremental steps.
I second that.
Second.
And it's in the draft legislation.
So the amendment has been properly moved and seconded. Is there any debate at this time? Someone? Or you can just speak.
Yeah. I met with Senator Romery and I agree with the amendment as the author.
So, see, yeah.
Yeah, direct question just to Mike Young. Do you think this is a good idea?
I'd like to see what the final package of the bill looks like before I comment. I want you guys to figure out what kind of legislation we're putting together first. Plus, I need time.
All right. Seeing no further discussion at this time, we will move to a vote on Senator Romery's amendment. So, all in favor, please raise your name placards. Unanimous. All right, with a unanimous vote, the amendment passes. So we're back to discussion on the floor about the bill. Yes.
Will you 2 minutes of my time for our senior policy advice?
Alright, so I just want to say, I appreciate you guys taking interest in my position. I understand the vagueness of my role, and trust me, this is something me and Mike Young had a lot of conversations about when he was considering me for it way back when, because it really isn't that well defined. And I totally understand giving me more responsibility as far as like having a specific job to do all the time, because there have been multiple times where I finished a project and haven't come up with a new idea, or I come back, I haven't had anything on the plate for me yet. So having something else to do that's consistent, I would really appreciate that. I would recommend that senior policy advisor more or less absorbs the position of press secretary rather than the secretary absorbing the senior policy advisor.
Thank you. Yes.
Direct question to Prendergast. So you would recommend calling the position still senior policy advisor?
Yes. Nothing against our current press secretary. Actually, I don't know if he happens since Corey left. But I feel as though approaching administration as the press secretary will be a different way than approaching it as a senior policy advisor.
Yes, Senator Friedman.